Hey guys, Papa Pete back again today, and last Saturday afternoon, Tom and Tallarico and the Intellivision crew had a big special announcement, a special event planned. They were going to do a live Q&A with some streaming. Things didn't work out very well with the streaming. They had some technical difficulties, not a real big deal at all, because the main crux of the event was two videos that were being released about the upcoming Amico. And the first one I'm going to look at here today, it's been a little while, but I've taken some time to think and reflect upon the release of the Meet Amico hardware design video. We learned a lot in this video. A lot of questions were answered about where the Amico is going, how far it had come before the original date of October 10th, 2020, which of course COVID put a kibosh to, and now we're going to wait till next April. But still, there's a lot of news in this video, and I want to talk about a little bit here today. Stick around. After the video, don't forget to check out Intellivisioncollector.com for all your Intellivision needs. That's Intellivisioncollector.com. We'd all seen a lot of information, pictures, and we've seen videos of it being used, the Amico. We knew what it's going to look like, but had a little bit better explanation of exactly why it looks the way it looks. They're going with a more geometric design that's more family-oriented, friendly. They're losing some of these, very sharp angle designs that have been a lot of consoles in recent generations. And I can see where they're getting at. Something that's almost softer, just fits in more in the living room as part of the family orientation. And what I found quite humorous about this whole thing is that well after the Amico released this type of design, the PlayStation, Sony and the PlayStation 5 come right out, and they have a very similar design as well. Sony's consoles, and especially really Xboxes have as well, Microsoft, have a very square, very cut, with angles and straight lines. And now the trend, starting with the Amico, has been gone to having a more contoured design, which is just a little bit easier on the eyes. And I don't know, I'll just stick with the word softer. One of the first aspects of the Amico that they talked about quite a bit of detail was the lighting that's being used in the system. I think this is an incredibly interesting feature. Tommy goes on and talks about how, with his experience with video games live, he's really learned how important lighting is to the overall presentation, the ambiance of a show. And he's carried it from the very successful video games live into the Amico, into the living room console. And the lighting does some amazing things. Let's talk about straight LED count first. There's going to be 40 LEDs, different color fluctuating LEDs in the console itself, plus another dozen in each of the control pads. And what can they use this lighting for, these different lights? Well, it can go all kinds of different colors, of course. They can incorporate it into the gameplay, whether it's, let's say, something like in Safecracker, Tommy talks about, not that specific game, but you could use it to open chests by getting certain color combinations or certain colors in certain orders. You could use it as a straight ambiance effect. Like, for example, if you have a police chase or something like that, you can have it as the police cars. You can have a racing game where you have the yellow flags out, flashing yellow. Or you can even do things like fireworks, or one of the things I'm going to talk about in my next video, but they've also incorporated things like happy birthday celebrations. All of these things can be incorporated in with these lights, and the lights and the lighting effects are going to create a very, very neat ambiance for the entire system. Probably throughout the whole living room, because they're going to be pretty bright if it's sitting there in the middle. Plus, it's in your hand, dealing with it, right? I can remember back when I was a kid, one of the things I used to love the most about going to the old arcades, you'd walk into the arcade and the ambiance of all the flashing lights, whether it was the pinball machine that had the police light on the top, or the video game that just had things flashing, not just the screen, but all over the cabinet as well. And it really created an atmosphere that you love to go and visit, that was just overwhelming, sensory. It just took you right into the realm of the video game, and that's what the Amico is trying to do. And I think there's nothing short of their imagination that they can use this lighting for to help do so. Next, Slade Simpson talked about how they went and chose the specific polymers that they're using to design the Amico, because these are very important decisions, a combination of not only weight and durability, but to integrate with the lighting features of the system, and also to be able to properly design that system so it can be passively cooled. Because like they said, it's designed in a way that air can free flow throughout the system, and there's no need of fans or other moving parts. They're even solid state memory. And we all know that moving parts like fans are usually the first things to go on systems. Any moving part is just a time bomb waiting to break. So if they can avoid those things, they're going to make, well, part of their goal, which is to have a system that will last an extremely long time, if not generations. Old systems like the Intellivisions and the Ataris back when I was a kid, so many of them, a high percentage, still work. There were no moving parts in them at all. But now modern day systems that have the fans, that have the hard drives that spin, those tend to break down more often. So they're trying to revert back to the day when things just air cooled and you didn't have those moving parts to break and wear down and make your system not last as long. I also really liked how they had the 3D CAD design and they showed the cross section as it went from one side to the other. You could see how the things all fit together because every fin, every slot, every piece of polymer inside that device has a specific purpose, and there's nothing extra in there because, like I said, you have to worry about the cooling. It just goes to show the incredibly great care and design that's taken place to create this fantastic machine. This is not a fly-by-night operation. They've put so much time and effort into this, and you could say COVID, it's late. COVID actually delayed the system, but frankly, maybe it even gave it a little bit more time to better design the system that ultimately we're going to get, because we'll get there eventually. You know, April's just around the corner. Next, I talk about the chip that's going to be used in the Amico. And I'm going to be the first one to say that I don't really know a whole lot about the chips. But what I do recognize is a name brand that's been around for a significantly long time that you can trust when it comes to producing the things that are needed to create a game like this. And Qualcomm, specifically the Snapdragon name, but Qualcomm is a name that I've heard before. I understand. I recognize that name as somebody who is not an expert on computer chips. I still recognize that name as being a trustworthy member of that industry. It really made me feel good when I heard Tommy announce that name because, again, like I said, I actually recognized it, which surprised me. But all in all, to be quite honest, I could care less what they have for a chip inside this thing, as long as two things are met. First of all, it's got to be able to play those games that I want to play. If it's strong enough to run the games as they're designing for the Amico, the simple games that are just going to be a lot of fun for the whole family to play, then I'm happy with the chip. And the only other thing that I'm thinking about is, like I said before, the quality control. As long as you pick a good name brand chip that can get the support it needs, that can do the testing that it needs before it's released, I'm very happy with that choice. So, at the end of the day, as soon as he announced something that I even heard of, I thought, well, you know what? What? That sounds good to me. The next thing they talked about in the video were the different ports that are on the machine. Now, there aren't very many. Basically, the back of the machine has the very basic things that you would need. You have the power AC adapter plug to go in and plug into the wall. You have the HDMI port and two other ports. You have a micro SD port for expanding the memory, expanding above and beyond the 32 gig of solid state memory that's already included with the Amico. You can put it in whatever size micro SD card you want. And also, last but not least, there's a USB-C port. And that's great because it allows for any future expansion that needs to be done to the Amico. If they come up with some other device, that's their method of hooking it into the original console. So, what more do you need? Nothing, I don't believe. I think that's just about it. Of course, now we all know that the Amico is going to come in 5 different colors as of right now. You have your basic, you have your glacier white, and your graphite black. Those are the 2 main colors, but the other 3 are going to be special editions. You have your Galaxy Purple, which currently is only available by pre-order from GameStop. You have your GTO Red. I don't even know off the top of my head where that one's coming from because it's not the one I look for. The one I look for, naturally, of course, I wanted the vintage wood grain. My Founders Edition's coming in vintage wood grain. And being a lifelong old-time Intellivision lover, what else am I going to want but the vintage wood grain? So I'm very happy that it's going to come like that. Will I go and try to collect some other colors? I don't think I will right away. I don't think any of them are going to go away. I think the red one's pretty slick looking, but they all are, really. But at the end of the day, I just want that vintage wood grain system sitting right here, and that's the one I'm going to play first. So I'm very happy with that. Joined by Coco here for the last part of this video. That a girl taking up her spot, her favorite spot there in the basket on my desk, right? That a girl. Good job. So the last thing that they talk about in the video, the hardware design video, is the controllers. And they've talked a lot about the controllers over the years leading up to the Amico's release, because it is a very kind of revolutionary product. They've got an amazing amount of technology built into this controller. Now, it is designed based upon the original Intellivision controller from the system back in the 80s. Now, people either love that system, love that controller, or they absolutely hated that controller. It seemed like there was no in between, and frankly, there were a lot more haters than lovers, in my opinion. Is what I've found. But that being said, Tommy and his team were well aware of all the features that made the original Intellivision controller difficult to use. The orientation isn't really natural in comparison to other video game controllers. It was more natural back in the actual 1980s themselves, because things weren't as concrete as they are. But since the introduction of the NES controller and the sideways orientation with the D-pad, the original Intellivision just doesn't seem quite right. And people find it very uncomfortable, especially trying to push the side buttons, the keypad buttons, etc., etc. But Tommy and his team took all those things into consideration, stayed loyal to the original Intellivision controller, and dealt with those issues. The keypad is now a touchscreen, and you can use that touchscreen in all kinds of different ways, not just for buttons on a 12-button keypad. The side buttons, which are really kind of difficult to hit on the original Intellivision controller, are contoured and much, much softer and easier to feel and press. And as far as contour goes, the entire controller itself is very well contoured to your hand, so you can hold it in any direction. Now, as far as holding it in any direction, like I said, I'll probably pick the thing up and I'll try to play it like an old television right off the get-go, but maybe your instinct isn't to do so. And you can even, in the middle of a game, press the home button, pause everything, reorient the controller to whatever position you want to hold it in, hit the button, it'll adjust your keypad direction, it'll adjust your D-pad direction, and you can do that right on the fly. Like, then you just unpause the game and the controller's changed around. So that's incredible technology. Other things that this Intellivision Amico controller have in is a little speaker, a little microphone, which also can be used, like, remember I talked earlier about blowing out candles? We'll talk about that video. They've actually released another video talking about special events once the Amico is released that people will have on their system. One of them is blowing out candles on a birthday cake, and it can be done with the Amico controller. It's really kind of neat. Now, the next big question with the controller is how long would it last at a charge? And on a full charge, it'll last 4 to 6 hours. How long does it take to charge it? Well, it charges really simply with Connect pins when you nest it in the system. You've seen lots of pictures of the controllers nested in the system. Well, when they're like that, they're charging. It'll charge in 2 hours. You can also charge it with the USB-C device. Just plug it into the wall, charge it like that if for whatever reason you need to. I'm not 100% sure that you can plug it in and have it charging or maintain power while you're playing, but it's something to look into, and we'll probably find that out before long. Maybe it's already been announced, I'm not sure, but I don't know that for sure, so I'm only going to say it's a possibility. What I do know is that you can charge it with the USB-C connection as well. If you don't, for whatever reason, if you aren't able to nest it in your top controller. Maybe you have more than two. Maybe you bought some extras, which will be available, so you have to charge them other than on top of your system. So at the end of the day, I'm really looking forward to seeing this controller, because I just think there's so many things. Tack in the lights. It's got a dozen LEDs built into it too. There are so many things that the game developers are going to be able to latch onto to create more and more inventive games for the Amico system. I said the controllers were one of the last things I was going to talk about, but actually there is one more, and that's the fact that here in the video they introduce us to the COO and the CEO of ARC Electronics, who are going to be producing the actual boards and Amico consoles. It was great to have them in the video because they described their company. It's a company that's been around for over 30 years, and they showed scenes of their design board and the design floor, manufacturing floor, and talked about how they were so eager to work with the Intellivision team. Throughout the negotiations, so they would be producing these consoles, they explain how they have so many similar company values as the Intellivision team, like the family orientation. They talk about how their employees, their families come first, and they find that that makes them a better company. Another thing that was very important that I heard is there was the COO said that they are advanced enough in their technology. They have been stable enough in their production that they're able to produce a 99.98% success rate in producing their boards, which means they'll only have 2 bad boards out of 10,000. And to me, that's incredible, because look at all the problems that new consoles have had over the years, whether it be the Red Ring of Death or there's problems with the PS3. It just really is very heartening to know that Tommy is working with a company that's this stable in the electronics production world. So really happy to see Arc Electronics in the mix. Well, what do you think? That enough for today? I think that's about enough, guys, for my look back at the Intellivision hardware design video that they released last Saturday. I know it would have been nice to have had it out on 10/10/20 to commemorate, pay tribute to Tommy's sister Karen as being on her birthday, but on that note, I just like to, today is actually 10/16/20 that I'm making this video, and I'd like to dedicate it to my brother-in-law, Gary, who I've mentioned in many of my videos. I dedicate every video in the 125 to him, because today would have been his 67th birthday as well, and he passed away a little bit under 6 years ago. So, a very important person in my life, introduced me to a lot of VCRs and movies and the Intellivision system. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have that television sitting right over there right today. So it's a very important day for me, and I often sit back and wonder what he would think about this entire Amico story. Anyway, guys, thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age